Blood pooled on the rain-slicked runway, the private jet engines whining in the background. The most feared man in Chicago just threw away a billion-dollar empire for a crying 6-year-old. But the real shock came when the boy's mother walked through a storm of bullets, holding a detonator. Massimo Conti stood on the desolate tarmac of Chicago Executive Airport, the frigid November wind biting at the lapels of his tailored charcoal coat. The engines of his Gulfstream G650 spooled up, emitting a high-pitched scream that drowned out the distant sirens of the sprawling city. Tonight was supposed to be the culmination of a decade of blood, strategy, and ruthless ambition. The flight to Palermo would secure a permanent alliance with the Sicilian Commission, effectively cutting off Trent Falcone and starving the rival Falcone crime family out of the Midwest. Massimo checked his Patek Philippe watch, his expression a mask of hardened stone. Cold, calculated, and entirely devoid of anything resembling a conscience, he was a man who measured human lives in profit margins and territorial gains. He did not care about collateral damage. He did not believe in mercy. He was the Don of the Conti Syndicate, a ghost in the criminal underworld who pulled the strings of politicians and police chiefs alike. Then the perimeter alarms of the private hangar blared, a piercing shriek that cut through the night air. A battered Honda Civic smashed through the reinforced chain-link gate at 60 miles an hour. Tires shrieking as the vehicle spun wildly on the wet asphalt. Before the car even came to a complete halt, the driver's side door was kicked open. But it wasn't an elite hit squad that spilled out onto the runway. It was a little boy, no older than 6, clutching a worn stuffed bear, his knees scraped and bleeding through his torn jeans. Following close behind the boy were 2 heavy black Escalades. They braked violently, tires smoking, and 4 of Trent Falcone's hardened enforcers stepped out, raising suppressed submachine guns toward the fleeing child. Massimo's head of security, a hulking man named Dante, stepped immediately in front of Massimo, shielding him. "Boss, we need to board. Now. This is Falcone trash-handling local business. Let the police scrape them up off the runway." But Massimo did not move. His dark, dead eyes locked onto the terrified child, shivering under the harsh glare of the halogen floodlights. He recognized that unruly mop of dark hair. He recognized the shape of those wide, terrified brown eyes. It was Leo Gallo. A heavy, unfamiliar tightness seized Massimo's chest, squeezing the breath from his lungs. For 6 long months, Massimo had harbored a dark, consuming secret. I was a man who could have any supermodel, heiress, or socialite on their knees with a single glance. Yet the only woman who occupied his every waking thought, the only woman who made his cold blood boil with a primal, possessive hunger, was Camilla Gallo. Camilla was not a slender, polished mob princess. She was a plus-sized, fiercely independent woman who ran a struggling late-night diner in the heart of Little Italy. She had soft, generous curves that Massimo wanted to bruise with his large hands, thick thighs he wanted wrapped around his waist, and a sharp, unyielding tongue that drove him to absolute madness. She was entirely oblivious to the fact that the most dangerous man in the city had a dozen heavily armed men watching her run-down apartment every single night to ensure she slept safely. And right now, Falcone's men were raising their weapons at Camilla's only child. "Cancel the flight," Massimo ordered, his voice a low, gravelly rasp that sent shivers down the spines of his own hardened soldiers. Dante hesitated, looking back at the idling jet. "Boss, The Sicilians will take this as a massive insult. If you do not step on that plane, the deal will fall through. We will lose the docks." I said cancel the flight. Massimo unbuttoned his expensive coat and drew the customized heavy-caliber pistol from his shoulder holster. He didn't wait for his soldiers to engage. He broke cover, striding directly into the line of fire like a demon unleashed from hell. The Falcone men barely had time to register the Don of the Conti Syndicate walking toward them before Massimo fired. His aim was surgical, born of years of brutal street warfare. One shot went straight through the eye of the man aiming at the boy. A second shot tore through the throat of the man stepping out of the passenger side, sending him crashing against the hood of the Escalade. Massimo's guards quickly recovered from their shock and opened fire, neutralizing the remaining 2 Falcone thugs in a deafening hail of brass and blood. A heavy silence fell over the tarmac, save for the whining jet engines spooling down and the quiet, terrified sobs of the little boy hiding behind a luggage cart. Massimo walked over the bleeding corpses, his expensive Italian leather shoes leaving crimson footprints on the wet concrete. He knelt in front of Leo. The boy looked up, terrified of the tall, imposing man who smelled of gunpowder and expensive cologne. "Are you hit, Leo?" Massimo asked, his tone miraculously softening, a gentle sound his men had never heard from him before. The boy shook his head, clutching his bear tighter against his small chest. "Where is your mother?" Massimo's heart pounded furiously against his ribs. If Trent Falcone had laid a single finger on Camilla, if he had marred her beautiful soft skin, Massimo would slowly skin the man alive and salt his exposed nerves. "The bad men broke into our house," Leo whispered, tears streaming down his dirty cheeks. "Mummy put me in her car. She told me to drive. She put a brick on the gas pedal and pushed me out here. She stayed behind to fight them." Massimo's blood ran ice cold. Camilla, a civilian, a woman whose plush body he fantasized about, worshipping every night, had drawn Falcone's hitters away so her son could escape. She had sacrificed herself. Massimo scooped the boy up into his arms, pressing Leo's face into his broad shoulder so the child wouldn't have to look at the dead bodies scattered across the runway. He looked back at Dante, his eyes pitch black and devoid of any remaining humanity. "Lock down the city," Massimo commanded, his voice echoing like a death knell. "Send 50 men to Little Italy. Burn Falcone's warehouses to the ground. Find her. If Camilla Gallo is dead, Chicago burns with her." Massimo brought Leo to the Conti Syndicate's primary stronghold, a highly secure penthouse encompassing the top 3 floors of a towering, brutalist skyscraper in the Loop. The building was a modern fortress, equipped with bulletproof glass, reinforced steel doors, and an army of heavily armed soldiers patrolling the corridors. Massimo sat on a plush velvet couch in the massive living room, awkwardly handing Leo a bowl of expensive vanilla gelato. He had already dispatched his best men to Camilla's apartment and the diner, but the reports coming back over the encrypted radios were grim. The apartment was completely trashed. Bullet holes riddled the walls. Blood was smeared across the kitchen floor. But neither Camilla nor Trent Falcone's men were there. They had vanished. Massimo paced the length of the room, his fists clenched so tight his knuckles were white. He imagined Trent Falcone's filthy hands grabbing Camilla's lush, beautiful body. The thought alone was enough to make Massimo want to tear the city apart, brick by brick. He had built his criminal empire on patience and cold, calculating logic. But right now, he was a feral animal driven by pure, unadulterated obsession. She was his. She just didn't know it yet. And nobody touched what belonged to Massimo Conti. Just as Massimo was preparing to mobilize a full-scale, all-out assault on Falcone's heavily fortified downtown headquarters, the private elevator chimes rang. Massimo drew his weapon instantly, aiming it directly at the polished steel doors. His guards in the room raised their assault rifles, the sound of safeties clicking off echoing loudly in the tense silence. The penthouse elevator required a biometric retinal scan to access. Only Massimo and his top 3 lieutenants had clearance to bring anyone up here. The heavy steel doors slid open. There, standing in the center of the elevator car, was not an assassin. It was Camilla Gallo, but she was not the smiling, flour-dusted woman who served black coffee at the diner. Her clothes were torn, her thick, dark hair wildly framing her face, and a nasty purple bruise was swelling along her left cheekbone. Her chest heaved with adrenaline, highlighting the generous curves that drove Massimo insane. However, it wasn't her striking beauty that shocked Massimo and his hardened killers. It was what she had strapped to her body. Wrapped tightly around her waist and thick torso was a crude but highly effective explosive vest made of C4 bricks and jagged shrapnel. In her right hand, she gripped a heavy dead man switch, her thumb pressing down hard on the trigger. And in her left hand, she was dragging a bleeding, whimpering man by the collar of his expensive, ruined suit. It was Trent Falcone's younger brother, Julian. "Hold your fire!" Massimo roared at his men, his heart slamming violently into his throat. Camilla stepped out of the elevator, her bare feet leaving bloody footprints on the pristine white marble floor. She didn't flinch at the dozen assault rifles pointed at her head. She only looked at Massimo, her dark eyes blazing with a maternal fury, so intense and raw it made the ruthless mafia boss take a step back. "Where is my son, Conti?" Camilla demanded, her voice echoing in the cavernous room, completely devoid of fear. Massimo was momentarily speechless. He had stalked her, watched her from the shadows for months, and categorized her as a sweet, vulnerable woman who desperately needed his dark protection. He had profoundly underestimated her. The woman standing before him was a warlord wrapped in explosives, a mother willing to vaporize herself and the entire Conti leadership just to get her child back. He felt a twisted, terrifying surge of arousal and absolute awe. "Camilla," Massimo said slowly, raising his hands to show he was lowering his weapon and slipping it back into his holster. "Leo is safe. He is here. Bring him to me," she hissed, her thumb visibly tightening on the trigger. "I know how you animals work. Trent's men attacked my home, but I know you and Trent are at war over the shipping docks. I know you missed your flight to Europe tonight. I figured Trent wanted Leo as leverage against my dead father's old gambling debts, or maybe you took him to get back at Trent. I don't care about your mafia politics. I broke into Trent's safe house, blew the vault, grabbed his brother, and came here. If I don't walk out of here with my boy right now, I let go of this button, and this entire floor rains down on downtown Chicago." "Yo blew up a safe house?" Massimo asked, his voice dripping with dark, intoxicating fascination. "My father was a demolitions expert for the outfit before he died," Camilla said, glaring at him, her heavy chest rising and falling. "I pay attention. I know how to wire a blast. Now bring me my son, Mummy." Leo came running from the massive kitchen, dropping his bowl of gelato on the expensive rug. He sprinted past the heavily armed guards and threw his small arms around his mother's thick thighs. Camilla gasped, a ragged sob finally breaking through her tough exterior. She carefully kept her thumb pressed firmly on the detonator, while her other hand reached down to stroke her son's dark hair. Thank God. Leo, are you okay? Did they hurt you? No, the tall, scary man saved me, Leo mumbled into her torn shirt. He shot the bad guys at the airport. Camilla looked up, her fierce expression faltering for the first time. She looked at Massimo, then at the bodies of her enemies she knew must be lying on the tarmac. You saved him. Massimo took a slow, deliberate step forward, waving his hand to dismiss his men out of the room. Leave us, he commanded. Dante hesitated, eyeing the explosive vest. Boss, that is live C4. If her hand slips... Get out, Massimo snarled, never taking his eyes off Camilla. The guards knew better than to disobey Massimo Conti. They filed out in silence, leaving only Massimo, Camilla, Leo, and the bleeding Julian Falcone groaning on the floor. I missed my flight for him, Massimo said, his deep voice wrapping around her like dark velvet. I abandoned my alliances for him, because he is yours. Camilla stared at him, confusion mingling with the pure adrenaline pumping through her veins. What do you mean, because he is mine? We don't even know each other, Massimo. We have never spoken. Massimo closed the distance between them, stopping mere inches from the deadly explosive vest. He could smell the sweat, the sharp tang of gunpowder, and the sweet vanilla scent that was uniquely hers. He looked down at her plush, beautiful figure, entirely unbothered by the bomb strapped to her waist. I know you, Camilla, he murmured, his gaze dropping to her full lips before meeting her fiery brown eyes again. I know you take your coffee black. I know you lock your diner at exactly 11 at night. I know you struggle to pay the rent because you fiercely refuse to take handouts from anyone. And I know that I have spent the last 6 months wanting to burn this city to the ground just to keep you warm. Camilla's breath hitched. You have been watching me, protecting you, Massimo corrected smoothly. Until tonight, Trent Falcone made the biggest mistake of his miserable life, thinking he could touch what is mine. I am not yours, Camilla snapped back, though her voice trembled slightly at the raw, obsessive heat radiating from his dark eyes. I am nobody's property. I am a mother, and I am leaving. Massimo smiled, a dangerous, breathtaking curve of his lips that rarely saw the light of day. A woman who walks into a mafia stronghold wearing C4 and dragging a hostage is a queen, Camilla. You aren't property. You are my equal. Now carefully, let me disarm that vest before my future wife blows us both to pieces. Camilla's mind was spinning. The ruthless head of the Conti syndicate was casually calling her his future wife while standing inches from a lethal blast radius. She looked down at the heavy detonator in her hand, then at the bruised, bloodied Julian Falcone, groaning on the floor beside her bare feet. If I let this go, you have to promise me. Trent Falcone dies tonight, Camilla said, her voice dropping to a deadly, serious whisper that made Massimo's blood roar with intense desire. Massimo reached out, his large, scarred hand gently covering hers over the detonator switch. He didn't flinch. He just stroked her soft knuckles with his thumb, completely trusting her. I promise you, Mia Regina, Massimo vowed, his eyes burning with a violent, dark promise. By sunrise, Trent Falcone's head will be delivered to you on a silver platter. Massimo carefully traced the intricate web of copper wire running across Camilla's waist, his large, scarred fingers brushing against the soft, generous curve of her stomach. Even with enough C4 strapped to her body to level the entire building, all Massimo could focus on was the heat radiating from her plush skin and the intoxicating scent of vanilla and adrenaline that clung to her. He did not break eye contact with her. His dark eyes remained locked on to her fierce, defiant gaze. With a steady, surgically precise movement, Massimo slipped a titanium pocket knife from his trousers and snipped the primary blue wire connected to the blasting cap. The small, blinking red diode on the explosive vest instantly went dark. Massimo exhaled a slow breath, gently prying the heavy dead man switch from Camilla's trembling, blistered hand. He tossed the detonator onto the velvet couch and carefully unbuckled the heavy canvas rig, letting the lethal vest drop to the marble floor with a heavy thud. The moment the weight was off her, Camilla's knees buckled. The sheer magnitude of what she had just done finally caught up to her. But before she could hit the floor, Massimo caught her. He wrapped his strong arms around her thick, lush waist, pulling her flush against his broad chest. She felt perfectly tailored to him, her soft, beautiful curves melting into his hard, muscular frame. For a man who had spent his entire life avoiding attachment, feeling Camilla in his arms felt like breathing for the very first time. "Dante," Massimo commanded, his voice returning to the cold, authoritative rasp of a mafia don. "Take Leo to the inner vault suite. Have the kitchen make him whatever he wants. Post 4 men inside the room and 10 at the door. If anyone who isn't me tries to enter, shoot them in the face." Dante nodded respectfully, a newfound look of absolute reverence in his eyes as he looked at Camilla. He gently ushered the young boy out of the living room, leaving Massimo, Camilla, and the bleeding Julian Falcone. Camilla pushed herself back slightly, though Massimo refused to let her step entirely out of his embrace. She looked down at Trent Falcone's younger brother, who was coughing up blood on the pristine rug. "Where is your brother, Julian?" Massimo asked, his tone deceptively calm, though the murderous intent radiating from his imposing figure was suffocating. Julian groaned, clutching his broken ribs. Camilla had clearly used a lead pipe on him before dragging him into the elevator. "Go to hell, Conti," Julian spat. "Trent is going to wipe your syndicate off the map. He is hitting your docks right now. He knows you missed your flight. He knows you are vulnerable." Massimo's lips curled into a cruel, dark smirk. "I am not vulnerable, Julian. I am untethered." Massimo drew his suppressed pistol and, without a second of hesitation or a flicker of emotion, shot Julian Falcone directly in the center of his forehead. The suppressed gunshot was nothing more than a deadly whisper, but the impact sent Julian slumping lifelessly against the floor. Camilla gasped, her hands instinctively gripping Massimo's lapels, but she did not look away. She'd grown up on the fringes of this violent world. She knew what happened to men who threatened children. Massimo holstered his weapon and reached up, his rough thumb gently wiping a smudge of dirt from Camilla's bruised cheekbone. He felt a violent surge of protectiveness over her. She was a masterpiece, a full-figured goddess who possessed more courage in her little finger than his most hardened enforcers. "Stay here," Massimo said, his voice dropping to a gravelly murmur meant only for her. "The penthouse is an impenetrable fortress. You and Leo are completely safe. I am going to the shipping docks. I am going to tear Trent Falcone apart with my bare hands for making you bleed." Camilla looked up into his pitch-black eyes, seeing the raw, unhinged obsession burning within them. "Why are you doing this, Massimo?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I am just a diner owner. I am not a supermodel. I am not a mob princess." "Why me?" Massimo cupped her face, his gaze dropping to her lush, parted lips before trailing down the generous, inviting swell of her breasts and the wide, beautiful flare of her hips. "Because you are everything. They are not," Massimo breathed, his voice vibrating with absolute devotion. "You are real. You are fierce. You are exactly as you were meant to be. I have craved every single curve of your body since the night I saw you throwing a drunken patron out of your diner in the pouring rain. I am a monster, Camilla, but I am your monster. And tonight, I am going to slaughter everyone who ever made you feel unsafe." Before Camilla could process the overwhelming weight of his confession, Massimo leaned down and captured at her lips. It was not a gentle kiss. It was a bruising, claiming brand of ownership, filled with months of repressed hunger and dark obsession. Camilla whimpered, her hands tangling in his dark hair as she kissed him back. The adrenaline and undeniable attraction finally shattering her iron-clad defenses. She tasted like vanilla and defiance, and Massimo drank her in as if he were a dying man in a desert. When he finally pulled away, his breathing was ragged. He pressed a kiss to her forehead, turned on his heel, and walked toward the private elevator. "Burn the docks," Massimo ordered, as Dante and a heavily armed strike team joined him in the corridor. "Take no prisoners. Tonight, the Falcone family ceases to exist." The Fulton Market shipping docks were a chaotic war zone of blinding floodlights, torrential rain, and deafening gunfire. Massimo's heavily armed syndicate soldiers moved like a precision scalpel, systematically dismantling Trent Falcone's defense lines. Shipping containers were riddled with heavy-caliber bullets, and the cold November air was thick with the metallic smell of blood and burning cordite. Massimo moved through the carnage like the Reaper himself. He wore no tactical vest, only his ruined charcoal suit, his face a terrifying mask of cold, unfeeling execution. He dropped 2 Falcone hitters with surgical shots to the chest as he advanced toward the primary warehouse overlooking the harbor. He knew Trent was inside. Dante kicked the heavy steel doors of the warehouse open, tossing in 2 flashbang grenades. The blinding explosions rocked the building, and Massimo stepped through the smoke, his weapon raised. The interior of the massive warehouse was relatively empty, save for a few wooden crates and a heavily fortified glass office perched on a metal catwalk near the ceiling. Standing on the catwalk, clutching a modified assault rifle, was Trent Falcone. He was a ruthless, deeply scarred man who had ruled the Midwest underworld through terror and extortion. But right now, looking down at the pile of his dead soldiers, Trent looked like a cornered rat. "It is over, Trent," Massimo's voice echoed through the cavernous space, slicing through the lingering ringing of the flashbangs. "Come down here and die like a man, or I will drag you down by your teeth." Trent laughed, a manic, desperate sound. "You think you won, Conti? You think because you stormed my docks, you get to walk away? You missed your flight. The Sicilians are pulling your funding. You are a dead man walking, and that fat bitch you are so obsessed with. My men have standing orders. If I don't check in by midnight, they are going to level that diner and everyone in Little Italy who ever smiled at her." Massimo's blood ran ice cold, a terrifying, absolute fury washing over him. He raised his pistol, perfectly aligning the sights with Trent's chest. But before Massimo could pull the trigger, the heavy bay doors at the rear of the warehouse violently shrieked open. Massimo turned slightly, his eyes widening in pure shock. A heavy, armored transport truck smashed through the loading dock barricades, sliding to a halt on the wet concrete floor. The driver's side door swung open, and Camilla stepped out. She was wearing a heavy tactical jacket over her torn clothes, her lush curves cutting a striking silhouette against the harsh headlights. But it was what she held in her hand that made Massimo's heart completely stop in awe. She held a remote detonator, similar to the one she had surrendered at the penthouse. But this one was connected to a different frequency. "Camilla!" Massimo shouted, breaking his cover and running toward her. "I told you to stay in the penthouse." "I told you I am not your property, Massimo," Camilla shouted back over the pouring rain, her dark eyes flashing with lethal intent. She looked up at the catwalk, staring dead into the eyes of the man who had dared to threaten her child. Trent scoffed, pointing his rifle down at her. "What is this? The baker brought a toy to a gunfight?" "You talk too much, Falcone," Camilla said, her voice eerily calm, channeling the deep, terrifying resilience that had allowed her to survive in the slums her whole life. "When I blew your safe house to grab your brother, I didn't just wire the front door. My father taught me to always leave a contingency plan. I wired the load-bearing pillars of your secondary weapons vault beneath this warehouse, the one you are standing directly over." Trent's manic smile instantly vanished, replaced by sheer, unfiltered panic. He looked down at his feet, realizing that the metal grating he was standing on connected directly to the underground sublevels. "You are bluffing, you stupid cow." Camilla's lips curled into a cold, merciless smile that perfectly mirrored Massimo's. "Call me a cow again," she whispered, and pressed the red button. The explosion was catastrophic. The entire right side of the warehouse, directly beneath the metal catwalk, erupted in a blinding pillar of orange fire and shattering concrete. The shockwave knocked Massimo's men to the ground, but Massimo lunged forward, wrapping his massive arms around Camilla and shielding her plush body with his own as debris rained down around them. The metal catwalk groaned, twisted, and entirely collapsed, sending Trent Falcone screaming into the fiery abyss of the detonated weapons vault below. Silence slowly returned to the docks, broken only by the crackle of the raging fire and the pounding rain. Massimo slowly stood up, pulling Camilla up with him. He looked at the burning wreckage of Trent Falcone's empire, and then he looked at the breathtaking, full-figured woman standing beside him. She hadn't just survived his dark world. She had conquered it. She had done the absolute unthinkable for a civilian. She had permanently eliminated a mafia boss to protect her son and the man who claimed her. Camilla was trembling, the adrenaline finally leaving her system. She looked at the fire, tears mingling with the rain on her bruised cheeks. "I had to do it," she whispered, her voice breaking. "He was going to hurt Leo. I was going to hurt my neighbors. I couldn't let him." Massimo framed her face with his large hands, ignoring the chaos and the approaching sirens in the distance. He forced her to look into his eyes, showing her nothing but absolute worship and unyielding devotion. "You did exactly what a queen is supposed to do," Massimo said softly, his thumbs tracing her cheekbones. "You protected your family." Camilla looked up at him, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Your family?" Massimo kissed her, a deep, consuming claim that sealed their fates together forever in the blood and rain of the Chicago underworld. "You are mine, Camilla. Every soft curve, every sharp edge, every beautiful, dangerous piece of you. You and Leo are under my absolute protection. The Conti Syndicate answers to you now." Camilla wrapped her arms around his neck, pressing her lush body against him, finally surrendering to the dark, consuming love of the ruthless mafia boss. She had lost her quiet, normal life, but she had gained a king who would burn the world down just to keep her safe. Wow, what an absolute roller coaster. Camilla proved that true strength and beauty come in all shapes and sizes, and Massimo showed us that even the most ruthless monsters can be tamed by a mother's fierce love. If you were captivated by this dark, high-stakes mafia romance, please smash that like button and share this story with your friends. Leave a comment below, letting me know your favorite twist, and do not forget to subscribe to the channel for more gripping, gritty underworld tales. See you in the next video.